Next guest has something to say to parents. He worked up close and personal with high school students since 2008, hearing common complaints, witnessing patterns of limiting beliefs, and helping them develop mindsets and skill sets for lifelong decision making through action. He's the founder of Passion for Leadership, a nationally recognized motivational speaker and school culture expert featured on MSNBC.com and TEDx Youth. Today, he's going to tell parents what their kids wish they knew, an insider view into what motivates students today. From Nebraska to New York, passion igniter, student whisperer, Lamarr Womble, everyone. So, it's such a self-serving project, this podcast thing is, to stay in touch with such cool people in my life that I went to high school with, that I can just bring back into my life. And you and I graduated in the same year, so we're kind of that special generation, micro generation between Xers and millennials, right? So we knew all about the analog, and we know about the digital. And so
Absolutely.
I'm so curious. The generation now, Generation Z, their parents are us, are like millennial Xers.
Yep.
How is Generation Z different from their millennial and Xer parents?
First of all, can I just say that I'm excited that you called me the student whisperer? Like, yes, yes. Like, first, I'm stealing that. First of all,
yeah, you steal away, my friend.
And second, I think that young people today have access like never before, and I think that's the main difference is that. When we were coming up, even in high school, there was a middleman or middlewoman for everything, right? And so if I wanted to write a book, I needed to know a publisher. If I wanted to make an album, I needed to know somebody that would sign me to a record deal. If I wanted to make a t-shirt line, I needed to have, somebody that knew a screen printer. And the difference is kids just don't have those barriers anymore. And so they have direct access to creating and making whatever they want. And when you have that, then it kind of changes the game for you as a student. And I think obviously parents get caught up in a little bit of, I think as we get older, you start looking, you kind of turn your nose at the next generation. Well, back in my day,
right.
And that gets you caught up in preventing being able to see what is possible.
That's so true. Yeah.
For your child and what they can do, what they have access to. And I think that parents all think that their kids want to be like YouTubers and podcasters.
Hey.
But they should want to do those things because like that's where we're going,
Yeah. And there's obviously, we're kind of in the beginning parts of figuring out the negative of having access all the time, being connected all the time. So what kind of hang-ups have you found that Generation Z has that you and I don't relate to from our generation?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
What kind of hang-ups does Generation Z struggle with? Like, what kind of struggles do they have that, people that were our age don't struggle with? Basically, their parents.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think, we went through this phase, like after we graduated from high school, we went through a phase where, anti-bullying was huge, right? Like, I felt like in high school, people were bullied, but it didn't feel like it was rising to the point where kids were, committing suicide or kids were lacking confidence. And so I think now it's a combination of the bullying and the online bullying that just goes way too far and messes with kids emotionally. And then the other half of that, I think, is it's the comparison syndrome where like you're constantly looking at social media and you're trying to figure out why this person has this amount of money, or it looks like they have this access to a vacation, or it looks like they have, this great life. but what are they actually doing to create that for themselves? And so people are trying to live up to an image that may or may not exist for lots of young people. And they kind of define that as their success. And so, one thing that I try to help young people do is just like get very clear on, what is it that they want, and using their passion as a guide to make decisions in their life. And I think when you really get them tuned in and connected to something that's in their heart, they can fight against the comparison. They can fight against some of the emotional things that might push them in the wrong direction. And I really do believe that like finding your passion and doing what you love allows you to fight against those things.
Do you feel like teenagers can know what they want? I mean, their prefrontal cortexes are not developed yet.
Yeah. I don't even know what that is that you just said.
So the part of their brain that's like decision making and logic and, putting the pieces together, it doesn't develop until you're like 25. And so,
for sure,
I think it's part of the struggle of being a teen, for me at least, was like, yeah, what do I want? Yep. So that's why I think what you do is so incredible, because it's hard for parents to come in and help their kid find what they want, because as you stated before, we're too wrapped up in who we used to be, and back in my day, going uphill both ways is right. So, it's like you do need that third party.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think young people, and that's actually one of the main things I discovered from working with young people and seeing how they interact with adults and parents in general. So you can imagine, the work that I did going into schools here in New York for the last 6 years was I'd go into a school, I'd be talking about following your dreams and following your passions, and kids are like, this is the conversation that they felt awkward having. Like they weren't prepared to have it because it was just an alien conversation to them. And so it's hard for a 15-year-old to identify, their thing. I think the thing that's most important is encouraging them to have as many experiences as they possibly can. And to really determine like, what are the things that I love? And so from a parent standpoint, parents have to let your child just experience as much as they can. And they have to let them make their own choices. And so I think a lot of times parents will make decisions for young people. And one of the main things that prevents kids from, being more successful later in life when it comes to like choosing and deciding what they want to do is feeling the pressure from parents. And so parents have to give their kids autonomy in their choices. They have to give them autonomy in the things that they want to do in terms of career, college major, hobbies, those types of things. And parents need to back off a little bit and let their kid fail. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're seeing now with parents. My girlfriend's a teacher and she teaches third graders. And, even with dealing with third graders, these parents come in thinking that their kid can't do any wrong. You know what I mean? And so you, first of all, have to believe that your kid ain't perfect and that this kid is capable and should make mistakes and not do things correctly. And that's okay. And they need to experience that and learn that early on. The student does, but also the parents need to allow kids to fail, because when you allow for that, then you kind of give them a whole experience of like this life thing, which is going to be up sometimes, it's going to be down sometimes. And I think when you can do that, you're actually better preparing your kid for what's next versus like, putting them into a pigeonhole saying, you have to do this because I did this, or your parents or your mom did this, or your uncle did this. And this is the way that I'm going to protect you from not being a failure later in life, is that I'm going to make sure that you do these things. You know what I mean? So it's all about experiences and just like giving your kid autonomy to make choices and try things without fear of failure.
That's huge, because you're right. That is real life. I've met a lot of college students who, to use an exaggerated example, major in German polka history, And then they graduate with a lot of debt. And then they're so upset that they don't have a career path in German polka history. So they choose no job and live at home with their parents because they can't follow their passion. How do you, as a coach and a motivational speaker, help students find the balance between following your passion and finding a career that will actually allow you to move out of your parents' basement?
Well, listen, first of all, everyone needs to get very comfortable with having your kid in your basement if they're pursuing the life of their dreams and of their passions. You know what I'm saying? And that's part of the old school mentality, which is, my kid's 26. They need to be out of my house. They can't be living in my house and not having their career together. But what are we saying? Like, if your kid is literally pursuing their passion and doing everything in their power to go after their dream, and they need to not pay rent because they need to put that money towards their dream or their passion, like, what are we saying? I mean, are we parenting? Are we supporting our child? Are we really supporting their dreams? And I think that's the conversation that needs to be had. That is like, you just have to be okay with that to a point, right? And kid has to be okay with, like, I'm cool being in the basement, because I don't think that always has to add up to, being a deadbeat kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think too many times it is being linked to that, where kids aren't trying or going after something that they want to do because they're still living at home. It's like, hella kids are living at home now. I think that to your point about finding a job or, finding skills that may not link to a major that gets you directly hired by somebody, that, to me, that's super important. And that's why I don't focus on, when I start working with young people, I don't focus on necessarily what their passion is going to be right away. I think that's, if I had to break it down in like high school terms or even college terms, when I'm working with young people, it's usually like their sophomore year, maybe their junior year, I start having conversations around passion. The main thing I'm having a conversation with them about is, what skills are they developing? And so, are you developing 21st century skills? Are you able to collaborate, work in teams, give presentations, communicate effectively to large groups of people, small groups of people? Can you lead people? Can you inspire people? Those types of things, because the world that we're moving into is one that, it obviously it always pays to have like a hard skill, but having a large collection of soft skills is going to get you a long way. And so your major means less when you have those capabilities. And it's important for students to be able to attain those skills. And then, no matter what they major in, they can go do whatever they want post that, unless it's like very specific, which in my book, there's only like 5 specific majors. We're talking like engineering, accounting, psychology, going to medical school, maybe going to law school. But other than that, I think that all the other degree programs are ambiguous enough and not so specific to where, as long as you get your degree, you can pretty much go do any job in our economy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And the experience that they would get from their parents letting them go and make mistakes and talk to people and interact would give them those soft skills that you're talking about. When you talk to students one-on-one, because that's a part of I love that that's a part of what you do, by the way. I think that's,
yeah, absolutely.
I loved what you said in one of your interviews, when I was internet stalking you, about your one-on-one work with students is the practice to your preach, which the preach is your motivational speaking. And I just think that sets you apart, because so many, it'd be easy, I shouldn't say so many, but it'd be easy for motivational speakers just to repeat some rhetoric and not really have any roots in what they're actually talking about. But so because you do that, because you're one-on-one with the students, what are some of the top complaints that they have about their parents that you wish parents could understand?
Yeah. I think to be honest, like, parents or students never really, the kids that I spoke to, there wasn't a lot of complaints about parents. I think if I had to give you a couple, I think one is because I feel like a kid's life, even though heavily influenced by what's going on at home, like when they get to school, it's also their opportunity to completely come out of that. You know what I mean? And so I never had a lot of conversations with young people about like their parents. More so, like it was more just about their personal life in general. And so if they did have like a harder or tougher personal life, coming to school was actually their salvage and their way to kind of get out of that, to talk about any other thing besides like what's going on at home. And sometimes we obviously did dabble in that, what's going on at home. But two things off the top of my head that impacts young people in terms of a parental restraint. One, parents that want their young people to do work that they did, right? So one of my, classic students is one of the best students I ever worked with. Her name was Giselle, and Giselle, when I met her, she was a junior in high school, she kept telling me she wanted to be a nurse. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not your vibe right now. Like the thing that you're communicating to me really is that you're a fashion girl. Like you want to do photography and modeling and like be in that world. Why do you want to be a nurse? And it was, it came out later on in the conversations that we're having one-on-one, like, oh, well, my mom wants me to do this. Like she wants me to be a nurse because I'm good at science. And, which is like, yeah, that's cool. And you are, but if this is what you're passionate about, fashion and photography and all that stuff, like this seems like it should be your path. So it turns out mom was and is a seamstress, is in fashion. And so by default knows that the fashion industry is hard, doesn't want her daughter to go into the fashion industry because she knows that it's a difficult field. Right. And so is deterring her from going after what it is that she actually wants. And so now there was like a showdown, right? Like kids have to have this showdown with their parents where they're like, am I going to have enough courage to sit down and have this conversation with my parents about what I really want to do? And so it has to become a conversation where kids are not just talking about it, they have to be in action about it. Right. And so Giselle went on to put on 4 fashion shows at our school. She went on to design 4 of her own dresses and personal pieces her senior year of high school. And so kids got to be about it. They can't talk about it. So if they're going to have that showdown with the parent, it's like, yeah, but this is what I'm doing, not what I'm just saying to you. Right. So that's one, is like, where are parents going to, take a backseat to what their kid actually wants. That's a big one. And then the second thing is, I think general support of a kid. I had one kid who, she's super, smart, great kid, but didn't have a lot of support at home. And she lived with her grandma. Dad was in jail. Mom came out of jail from drugs. And so you can imagine, like, this kid has siblings, so she has to babysit. She has a lot of responsibility. And what gets lost in her having to, like, do all this responsibility is that when she does well at school, nobody notices.
Oh. Yeah.
Right? Mom is too caught up in her stuff. Dad isn't there. Grandma's like, you need to take care of the kids. And so when she does well, nobody pays attention to her doing well. And so when she comes to school, it makes her feel like, well, why do I need to try? Because nobody cares when I do well. And so those were like 2 things that come to me, like really sit in my heart in terms of like where kids might be lacking from what parents aren't doing.
Yeah, those are big. Those are really big. You said you had some tips for our listeners that you wanted to share. Can you go ahead and share those now?
Yeah, I think, I worked in New York City and for the last 6 years worked in New York City high schools, but also have traveled around the country to a number of different colleges and universities. And, I worked with just low-income young people, straight up. I worked with kids that are part of the 4th congressional district in our country, in the South Bronx, New York. And not that that's representative of who the kids are, but, the perception of that group of students can be any number of things. And what I can tell you is that, these kids were phenomenal. They wanted to learn. They wanted to be great. They don't want anybody to do them any favors, because I think sometimes that can be the perception of kids that don't have a lot in the high schools that I've worked in. But even in the colleges that I've worked in, young people are having a problem believing in themselves. And so before you can have conversations with young people about, and this is what I had to discover for myself, about finding passion and doing what they love, they have to have belief systems that allow them to have confidence and to believe in their decision making. So for the high school kids, it's more about confidence and belief in themselves. And for the college kids, it's more about belief in their decisions and their decision making. And so one thing that I've been helping young people do is really get clear on their values and the things that are most important to them. And when you can get very clear on your list of what's most important, so family, religion, career, experiences, traveling, whatever this list of 5 things are, everything that you do, every decision that you make, every goal that you have for yourself, every job that you want, you should mirror that decision is that you have to make, and mirror it up against your values, and make a decision on if this is what you want based on the things that are most important to you. And it should alleviate a lot of the anxiety around the decisions and the confidence that you may be lacking, because you can surefire know these are the things that are most important to me, and because these are most important, if I'm making these decisions inside of those values, that I can't lose.
Right. Those are
what I mean? You can't lose. And I challenge everyone out there, parents and young people, to really think about the end of your life. And this is kind of weird and morbid, but think about the end of your life. And when you think about the end of your life, and when you ask people what do you want people to remember you for, right? On the back end of you're 85 and it's kind of all winding down, and you're reflecting at life, and you ask people what do you want people to remember you for? And people simply always say the same thing. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to take care of my family, and I wanted people to, look at me in high regard. And when I think about that's all you want. If that is all you want at the end of your life, and if you're currently living that life now as a college student, as a high school student, as a post high school student, you already won the game of life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you're saying at the end of your life that you just want to have people love and care about you, and that you want to do the same for people, then everything else that happens over the course of a lifetime is just that. Things that happen over the course of a lifetime. You have already put a stamp on how you wanted to live. Mm-hmm. And if you can just live more into that, and again, along with your values, then you already won the game.
So there's less anxiety, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I just want to communicate that to parents and young people over and over again, is that all the other stuff that we go through in our life is just a distraction from trying to get you away from the things that you care about the most. And that includes a job. You know what I mean? I just don't think jobs are natural to who we are. They've been given to us. It's something that we have to do while we're here. And we've accepted it as, a fact of just a way of life. And that's fine. But just understand that what is real is the things that you deem to be real. Right. For yourself, and live into those things every day, and you can't lose.
Because that's your personhood. Because when you don't have your job, that's what's left is who you are as a person, and how you touched or influenced the people around you. So that's a really cool perspective. I could really see how that would take the sting out of, oh my gosh, should we go to this school or that school? If parents want to have you talk with their student, like nationwide? Do you do that? Is that something that they could
Yeah.
connect with you about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do one-on-one coaching with young people and with young professionals. And so my website is just passionforleadership.com. You can reach out to me on the website, and then I can send you information around like coaching and the costs and, you know, things that we would cover in a coaching program, which I generally start with like 3 sessions and go from there. And so, yeah, I would love to talk to anybody and everyone that's listening, just because I think before you discover passion, like the mindset piece for parents and for young people is probably the most important thing. Can I share one more like piece of perspective that I really want to share?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing that in working with young people, especially college students, that I'm finding is that like everyone wants to kind of have life figured out by 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
And so I've really been trying to help young people in one-on-one conversations, but in my talks with them, that, you know, I try to break life up into 3/3, right? 30, 60, 90. 0 to 30 is the first third, 30 to 60 is the second third, 60 to 90 is the third third. And 0 to 30 is like the learning phase. And then 30 to 60 is the execution phase. 60 to 90 is the reflection phase. And so, you know, for young people that, you know, want to have life figured out by 25, it's really hard to have life figured out by 25 when you're still in the learning phase, right? You learn from 0 to, you know, for some of them, if they get a master's degree or PhD, like you're literally learning from 0 to 30. And then you go into an execution phase from 30 to 60. But to have this idea in your mind that by 22, you need to have life figured out, like you can't.
No.
Because you're still learning how to be yourself. You're still learning how to do your job. You're still learning how to learn.
Your prefrontal cortex is still developing.
Literally, your prefrontal cortex is still developing. And so, like,
yeah,
just know that the only race that you're running is the one against yourself. Mm-hmm. And when you can give yourself perspective to alleviate all those things, which includes the values conversation, which includes the conversation we were talking about, trying to just, you know, slow your pace a little bit, you're gonna be just fine.
That's
and parents need to go through that so then they can communicate that to their young people. You know,
yes,
like parents need that so they can then raise their children the way that gives their children that power and that autonomy and that mindset.
So generationally, this all matters because how you are, you pass it on to your kids. So if you can embrace, you know, live life with the end in mind, the end being death and how people remember you, then you can take the anxiety out. And then to take the anxiety out, you're not afraid to try things. And if you try things, you have more perspective and ability to make decisions. And yeah, I could see where this would all circle into a healthy young person. This has been so good, Lamarr. I'm so glad we got to talk today. So you said people can find you on your website. Say it again for us.
Yep, it's passionforleadership.com is the website, but then also social media is super easy as well. Instagram, LinkedIn are like the 2 places I spend the most time, and so you can just find me on both of those, Lamarr Womble, LamarrWomble, and reach out to me there as well, and we can talk and chit-chat and holler as well.
That's so perfect. Well, if you want to get notifications of more episodes like this and get the show notes from this episode, make sure you text REAL, REAL, to 66866. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. And as always, this was amazing. Thank you, Lamarr. That's a wrap. Great job.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. No, it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I love talking about it. So whenever you want to do it again.
Absolutely. You did great.